are in the smoke-filled room, and you're here for our 30th episode. Thank you so much for joining us. We're excited to be here. I'm Collin Corbett. I've got Core's political team here. Abby, Chris, Matt, Michael. Glad to have you guys with us. If you've missed it, we did a special live from the Lincoln Desk episode this week because filing deadline was Monday of this week. And we went through all the filings throughout the whole state to identify which districts you as center-right people throughout the state of Illinois should be paying attention to. The districts that have tough Republican primaries, the districts that Republicans need to hold in order to make ground in this state, make up ground, and the districts that Republicans could possibly pick up. Plus a number of districts that we should be talking about, but we aren't. It ended up going over 2 hours, but here's the kicker. Our awesome producer, Lane Davis, has put in there the time code, so you can select which district you care about to watch. You don't have to sit there for 2 hours and watch the whole thing. Even I was exhausted listening to our own voices for 2 hours. So I don't expect you to do that, but open that up. Lane will put the link to that episode in the comment section of this video, so you can go find that. I encourage you to watch it. We go through all the races you should care about, and you can click through and get an idea of what 2024 is going to look like. Here on this SFR, we're going to talk about the high-level stuff that we took away, and of course, as always, with our analysis from a more Republican or right-of-center perspective. Our first topic today is really just an overview, because something I saw a few days ago, and Michael, I know you on our team also noticed this, was the significantly low number of candidates who filed this time around. In 2024, only 436 candidates filed. To give you some idea, some perspective of how many candidates typically file, you look at presidential election years, which are always the highest number of candidates who file. And the last 6 times we've been in a presidential election, you saw 1,200, 1,700, 1,300, 1,700, 1,600, and 1,200 candidates file. We saw only 436 this time.
Wow.
Even, what's that? No, you're just agreeing with me. All right. Even in off-year elections, where you typically see fewer candidates file, we still saw that they had more candidates file. 800, 800, 600, 900, 700, 900, and 700. In the last 26 years, the number of candidates who filed in 2024 was the lowest. And the only reason why I say 26 years is that's the only data we have available from the state. I bet it goes back even further than that. And so there is clearly a marked lack of interest by candidates in running for office. I wanted to open it up to you as to your thoughts as to why that is. Why such a record low number of candidates who have filed? Michael, because I know you noticed this first, why don't you kick us off?
One thing I would say is this is the first time in quite a while, at least in my memory, that we don't have any statewide offices on the ballot. Like there's no U.S. Senate race. There's no, obviously all the statewide, like Illinois, like governor and those kind of things were this last cycle. So that obviously brings the number down a little bit. Obviously, we have less congressional districts now. That kind of brings the number down a little bit. And also
there's one fewer congressional district than there was.
That's probably at least worth, 3 or 4 candidates, I would say. And then also you've got the people really kind of realized last cycle, I would say, that there's a lot less opportunities to flip things, because of how the Democrats drew the maps. So they're just like, oh, I'm not interested. Or at least that's the perception.
Yeah, I think your last point is a solid one we should talk about. The others, I get it. I grant you that. But we're looking at 26 years of history here. You're telling me that not in any of these cycles there was never another time where there wasn't a statewide race or where there wasn't, Democrats have gerrymandered these districts repeatedly. This isn't the first time it's happened. So, yes, those are factors, but we're talking about a third of the number of candidates, or maybe even a quarter of the number of candidates who typically file in presidential years. That's a massive disparity.
Well, if you think about it, remember in 2022, we had candidates coming out our eyeballs. There were primaries all over the place. And granted, it was a redistricting year, so you're just inherently going to have more. But I think there was this sentiment, oh, yeah, this is a really favorable year for Republicans. And, this is going to be a great opportunity for pickups. And then when that definitely did not happen, a lot of people were very discouraged. And so now they see that, and now they see Trump on the top of the ticket, especially here in the suburbs. And they're thinking to themselves, why would I want to get myself involved in running for office when the conditions are just not ideal at all? It just doesn't seem like worth the risk.
And let me make sure I grant your point. So the second lowest that we've ever seen was 2014, which was also an election immediately after a redistricting year. So there is something to that. There is something to the fact that there were so many candidates last time. But even that time, there was almost 600, whereas we barely have over 400 this time. So there are factors here that go way above just sort of your basic factors. And I think you hit on one towards the end. Michael hit on one towards the end. There's clearly a lack of interest among candidates on both sides of the aisle, but we're especially seeing it on the Republican side.
So I think part of that could be natural too. I mean, the past few cycles we've seen so much activity, and there was almost every race on the ballot last cycle. Yeah, so but maybe there's just an inherent rebound factor.
That's what I just said. I just said that. I just said that I'm granting some of that. But even still, the last time that happened, we had 200 more candidates. So let's talk about, instead of giving all these excuses why it happened, let's get into some analysis. People come to us for actual analysis. So come on, be political experts here.
Well,
give me something more juicy.
A step further. I was going to add on to that last point, which is that a lot of these battleground areas, like the collar counties especially, traditionally there's been really blue areas, really red areas, and there was a lot of purple areas where it'd go back and forth, or there was battleground. And in the past few cycles, it's just been a complete blue wash that I think, like, we often forget that in 2018, we had a Republican at the top of the ticket as a governor, even though it was a traditionally blue state. So I think that a lot of the battleground areas have become hyper polarized, and we can blame that on redistricting or on whatever. But now that we see more just blue and just red and less in the middle, I think that has a lot to do with it.
Well, I would also say,
hold on, Michael. Hold on 1 second. Yeah. Sorry, Chris was trying to jump in before. Go ahead, Chris.
So my big thing about the lack of candidates filing really comes down to as Illinois becomes essentially a one-party state, because that's the direction this is going. If you're a conservative, you really have nothing to run for. And even if you do have a race in which you can run for, talking state level, we're talking state level filing here. There's just not really many things for you to run for that's actually competitive in the state. And even if there were, as we saw last cycle, I heard this from a lot of candidates last cycle and candidates who were looking into running this cycle, even if you get on the ballot, even if you make the decision to run, there's no support for you. You're on a list in the HRO office, and where it's like, okay, this is tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. That's for the state house. If you're a congressional candidate, you're on a list in the NRCC that's either care about or don't care about. There's nothing for a candidate to run for, really. And it's really all the focus for the special interests is on, like, the Democratic Party. So there's no outside force pushing people to run anymore either, as we drift into the one-party state.
Well, I don't even know if it's necessarily a one-party state, Chris. It's like, I think you see this a lot with a lot of the county organizations that typically drive this candidate recruitment, is that they're disorganized, they're fighting with themselves, and they're not necessarily focused on the goal. And I think as, things trend a bit more blue, people can't agree on where to go. And so I think we get to this election season and we're like, oh yeah, maybe we should recruit candidates instead of fighting. So I think because of that transition, it just creates all these issues with local party and candidate recruitment and all that.
I would also add that it seems to kind of be a bipartisan issue, because there are Republican elected officials that do not have opponents. The Democrats signaled that they were going to try to field all these candidates, and we're going to recruit Democrats to run against everybody. And we have a lot of Republican state reps and state senators that are going to be unopposed. And even at the county level, we'll talk about it later. I know it's on the agenda, but there's a lot of areas where the Democrats aren't even running candidates for county board or countywide offices. Like, it's not just a Republican issue.
Yeah, and listen, there's some good to this. All right, so let me make sure I'm being balanced, and you guys apparently are all positive. At least more positive than usual. But listen, I'll say there is some good to this, which is both parties have been hyper-focused. Which are the races we can win, and let's not necessarily focus on the races we can't. So there is some focus here on the swing districts over other districts. So some of this is intentional, I'll grant you. But let me ask you guys, I know the answer to this question. The four of you guys have been out trying to recruit candidates for the last 12 to 18 months for a lot of these districts. And I know you've reported back to me that in many districts, most people just don't want to run. I mean, I'm shocked that has not come up here in this discussion, that, four people who have spent a significant amount of time trying to recruit in many, many districts. And what you've heard back is, heck no, I'm not running.
And in the collar counties, it's a lot of I hear Trump, and I know that's not what Butler or Chris want to hear, but like that's in DuPage County in the suburbs. But like, why the heck would I run for office in Glen Ellen with Trump at the top of the ticket? It just seems like a suicide mission. And I also think it's worth pointing out it's not necessarily just us who are struggling. I think everyone across the board, whether it was HRO, SRO, county organizations, they were trying to recruit people, and they had no better luck than we did. So this is not just an us thing. This is a party wide problem.
Well, I
Yeah,
also
and that's my point. I mean, you guys are on the front lines of it, so it wasn't to call you
Yeah.
out. It was to say you guys have fought this more than almost anybody else in the state. So you guys can speak to how much of a difficulty it was getting candidates, good people who said, "Okay, I'll think about running, but maybe in 2 or 4 years." I mean, there are great people out there who can make a huge difference, but weren't willing to put their names on a yard sign.
Well, the other thing for this cycle specifically is that the economy is rough right now. And that speaks to the money end of things, sure, but it's also some people don't have the time or the ability to run for office right now with the way things are going in this country and in this state. I mean, that's an apolitical answer, I suppose, but seriously,
But it's an answer.
it takes a lot of time and a lot of resources to run for office. And because of the state of this country right now, people don't have the time or the resources to devote to running for office. Unless you're rich. Then if you're rich, then you can run, I guess.
Well, as Aerosmith would say,
unless
just
you want
eat
your
the rich
name
and it'll be all right.
smeared through the mud. If you
It's a negative feedback loop. In order to run for office, you need supporters and you need resources and you need people that are already in power to help pull you up. But then when a candidate loses, then they lose. Let's say there's an incumbent loses, then they lose those resources, they lose those connections, and they lose their level of fundraising. So then the next candidate has nothing to build from. So then because they can't help other candidates, those candidates lose, and it's just a cycle. The more we lose, the more we keep losing. So if you want to stop losing, stop losing.
Yeah.
That's high level strategic analysis from Matthew Darren. All right, let's get into some of these races we talked about. Again, I really encourage you guys to check out the live from the Lincoln Desk, which is also on the Long Nine YouTube channel. We get into dozens of districts. Obviously, here, we don't have time to do that here. What I've asked the team to do is to go through each of them, pick out one district they really want to highlight in these next categories we're going to talk about. So first, we're going to talk about the GOP hold districts. There are 7 specifically. I know Democrats have talked about a number of other districts that they're going to target. Most of them are completely out of the realm of possibility. There really are 7 districts that Democrats can target that they've got a decent shot at, or in some cases, maybe even a good shot at flipping. So let's talk about from you guys, which of these 7 you want to highlight? Who wants to go first?
I was going to highlight.
I'm going to cheat. I'm going to cheat a
little.
little bit. All right. Is Butler going to go?
No, go.
Well, if you're cheating, Oliver, let's let Butler go.
All right, I was just gonna say House District 114, Kevin Schmidt versus Latoya Greenwood, because the Democrats want to get Latoya back in there, so badly, and they're gonna put a lot of resources into this race this time for sure.
Yeah, let's talk about it. I mean, this is a district in our list. This is their top pickup opportunity. It's a D+3 district. Schmidt won it by 6. But up ballot, Republicans really struggle. They lose by as many as 7 to 14. So while this is part of that sort of Metro East area that's been really trending towards Republicans, which we'll talk about, that district specifically was drawn for Democrats, and Latoya Greenwood is their choice. She didn't run an impressive race last time. She's still not running an impressive race this time.
Right.
But it's not like Schmidt is blowing the doors out, with his fundraising. He's doing better. Again, we'll grant him he's doing better, but he's going to have to do a heck of a lot better than this. And Republicans are going to have to come in with a ton of resources. This will be a difficult district to hold on to. Schmidt, he's the kind of guy that tends to pull these races out. He just has that aura about him. So I would not bet against Schmidt. If I put money on this, I'd put it on Schmidt holding on to it. But all the numbers say that this is going to be the top pickup opportunity for Democrats, and they're going to be coming hard.
Absolutely. I mean, I think if you think back to this race last cycle, it was kind of like held together by like duct tape and string. Like it was just all these random outside groups that were just like, oh yeah, we'll do 2 mailers, or yeah, we'll send a letter, or there was no coordination. It didn't really like make sense. And then look at it. He overperformed, really by almost 9 points compared to what he should have, with it being a D+3 and him winning by 6. So we'll see if he's able to put up a strong showing this time. I think that is going to put this districts kind of to bed, because there's going to be like, all right, we can't do it.
Yeah, I mean, we talked on the live about how it's really going to come down to how Democrats improve with black turnout, especially because it's not just this district. Across the state, they've struggled for the last 2 years, and I don't see how their hard push on abortion is going to really help them increase black turnout. There's districts where that will help them in the suburbs, where it's just going to make it even harder for Republicans to win. This is not one of those districts. So if this is their top pickup opportunity, pursuing a hardline abortion agenda is really not going to help them in House District 114.
Yep.
All right, who else wants to go? Oliver, you want to cheat? I don't know if I'm going to like this.
So I was going to point out one House district, but I'm going to point out House District 47 and House District 48, mostly because I just hear people talk about these as potential pickups for Democrats in tandem. These are the last two strong Republican districts in DuPage County. And I think a lot of Democrats have these two districts on their list as top pickup opportunities. If I'm going to have to say, like, House District 47, I would say is probably where the Democrats are going to focus a little more of their attention. They have a stronger Democrat candidate there in Jackie Williamson, and God love Amy Grant. She's not a great fundraiser. She works her butt off, but she just, is not necessarily going to have the resources to get her message out as much. So I think she's going to have a little tougher opponent than Jennifer Sandleacher on House District 48. But I would just say those two are going to be bellwethers in DuPage County if Democrats can pick up ground.
Yeah, I mean, locally, those districts are pretty close, R5, R4. They're really, in a presidential year, going to play closer to even, maybe R1, but they're still not blue districts. But this is where candidate quality absolutely is going to make the difference. I mean, what we saw in this last election was candidate quality can gain you or lose you 3 points. That means there's a 6-point swing just based on the quality of the candidate. And you look at, as you mentioned, in District 47, Democrats have a high-quality candidate. And while I love Amy Grant in terms of her campaigning, she isn't overly strong. Meanwhile, when you look at House District 48, Democrats don't have as strong of a candidate, and Sandleacher has proven to be a great campaigner. And so you might see the difference in these two districts just come down to sort of candidate and campaign quality. Amy Grant, again, we like her. She always finds some way to win, but she also hasn't faced as tough of a challenge as she's going to face this time around. Trump lost that district by 12. Republicans tend to do better there, but she's going to have to run the best race she's ever run, and there is a reason to be concerned about whether or not she can pull that off, but we got to give her the chance, right? There's 11 months to see how she does, but she's going to have to run the best race she's ever run, and that's why that district is rated the third best pickup opportunity for Democrats in 24.
Yeah, and this she's run against someone who's run against her last cycle, and she has good infrastructure and a lot of support from the Democrat Party. So I think that's going to be a very fascinating race to see what happens. Amy Grant always wins. I don't know how she does it, but she always wins. So hopefully she can pull it out of her hat again.
All right, Chris, Matt, what do you guys got?
All right, so I'm going to go with, again, I don't really got a lot of Dem pickup opportunities in my area. They either have it or they don't. House District 79. The only reason I'm talking about House District 79 is, like we talked about in the live stream, 5 Democrats filed to run in this race. So they're seeing something. Somebody's looking at Vote Builder down in Springfield, and they're saying, we could win this district. Why they think this, I don't know. You have a number of, like I said, 5 Democrats running. The 2 top-tier candidates are Geneva Walters from Kankakee, Regional Office of Education, and I believe she's from Regional Office of Education. If I'm wrong, shoot me. And Billy Morgan, who's a Mooney Township trustee who worked in the Pat Quinn administration. I think Billy Morgan's going to come out of that primary personally. But even if it's Morgan as opposed to Geneva Walters, I don't really think that makes much of a difference. I think Jackie Haas is extremely likable in her district. She fits her district very well. Kankakee County loves her. She overperformed by like 17 points last year or something like that. Some absurd number. So Jackie Haas, she'll be fine, but the Democrats are seeing something in this district that maybe I'm not. They want to play here.
Yeah, so she won by 17. She overperformed by 10. So that is a very, very strong overperformance, as you said. Haas is very well liked. I kind of think, I've been thinking about this for the last week, because we talked about this on the live too. Why the heck Democrats have been lining up here? The only answer I have is Goshen. So anytime things happen, anytime there's a reason for people to be politically interested in an area, it trickles to other things. So there's a lot of political involvement over Goshen in that region, simply because, Pritzker and the Democrats are coming in trying to make sure they do a better job of messaging that than what happened in Michigan, where it just became a complete cluster. And so there's been a lot of political discussions, political involvement for the last 6 months or so in that area. And it just may have led to more people thinking politically, acting politically, and just deciding, hey, I'm going to run. And their only option here is to run for that House district in 79. So I don't have any other reason, because I don't think Democrats down in Springfield are actively targeting the seat. Maybe some are, but anyone in the right mind looks at this and says, Dems ain't winning the seat. So the only answer I have is it just must be just sort of Goshen or other local things that are just getting people whipped up and wanting to put their names on the ballot.
See, I'd agree with you if it wasn't for the fact that a lot of people at least 3 of the people coming forward right now are actually already politically involved. If this was a grassroots campaign to build up, if this was the primary challenger, if the Valhalla special materialized and she got primaried, I'd wager that would be correct. But that didn't happen. And a lot of these people were already politically involved. And if I'm not mistaken, some of this stuff started coming out about candidates announced before the Goshen stuff really popped off. So, again, somebody's looking at something in the Democratic Party and they're seeing something. But at the same time, like you just said, I mean, if they want to run for something, there's not really much else for them to run for. I mean, Joyce is entrenched. We can't primary Patrick Joyce. There's not really much else for Democrats to really grab onto in rural Will and Kankakee County. So this might be what they want to look for.
It's just kind of strange. Like, you wouldn't expect Democrats to run in response to Goshen. Like, they're not going to be against it. And I wouldn't think they'd be out there saying, we love communist China either.
Yeah, my point was just it gets people more active. It doesn't mean they're running because of Goshen. It just means there's just political involvement, political investment, and so more people are interested. And then suddenly like, oh, I'll run for office. Well, what is there to run for? Oh, let's run for this. That's the only thing I was saying. But Chris is right. It probably isn't true. I'm just saying it's the only thing I can think of. All right, Dre, what do you got?
Well, first thing, I just like how Chris says Kankakee County. I could listen to him saying that all day. It just rolls off his tongue so effortlessly. But the one seat that we definitely need to hold, we can't let the Democrats take, is House District 52. A lot of people have said there's no way we're going to lose this seat, but those same exact words is why a lot of the collar counties have went from solid red to blue. It's just we think that it's safe when it's not. I mean, last time, Marty McLaughlin, he's a great guy, but 48-52 was what his incumbent lost by. And this is going to be a year that is going to be as hard, if not probably harder than last cycle, just with a lot of external factors. And one important thing, too, about this seat is this is in the Senate seat of Dan McConkey's Senate seat. And I know for a fact the Democrats are going to be targeting this in 2 years. So we need to do well in this seat this cycle so we could do better and keep both seats next cycle. Especially in Lake County and Northern Cook County, there's the established red areas and the established blue areas. This district is supposed to be in one of those areas that's solidly red, and Democrats have just been slowly chipping at it slowly. And if they get this, then I think all bets are off and we should all pack up and leave. So we need to protect this seat as much as we can.
Wow.
Yeah. And as you said, I mean, we all like Marty. And the issue is he has underperformed electorally. I think he does again this time. I still think that means he wins by a few points, but winning by a few points in that district is not good enough. And I think the big thing, we talked about this on the live, we don't have the resources. The Republican Party, if the Republican Party has to waste money on House District 52, this is going to be an awful election season for us. We have, that's our sixth worst district in terms of holds. We got to spend it on the 5 districts that are higher priority that are holds, and we got to spend it on pickup opportunities. If we're spending it here on House District 52, then it's going to be a horrible year for Republicans. Marty's got to step up on fundraising and on campaigning because he needs to find some way to stand on his own 2 feet in this race. And the Dems are to come hard, which means it's not just Marty staying on his own 2 feet. He's got to be able to stand on his own 2 feet against 6-figure investment on the Democratic side. It was just Marty against his opponent one-on-one without the Dems coming in with lots of money, he'd do that just fine. That's kind of what he's always done. But here he's going to have to run the best race he's ever run because somehow, some way, he's going to need to do this without help. I don't see that happening, which means Republicans are going to have to come in here in 52 to make sure Marty wins, which means that's all resources we're not spending on more important districts. And that's what scares me about 52.
I don't mean to go off on a tangent here, but that's kind of the main problem here, Collin, is that the Republican Party is so far removed from offense, it's just completely focused on defense. And it's races like this that are going to, like, if McLaughlin loses, there's going to be another podcast in 2 years where we're talking about how it's going to be the key Republican pickup opportunity, but we're going to be focusing on another race that we just won, that the Republican Party just won by half a point. So it's I don't know. What is the diminishing it's a negative cycle. You know what I mean? So with the race that are on.
Yeah, I hear your point, but we're about to talk about pickup opportunities, and there's a lot more pickups than there are holds for Republicans. I mean, look at this list. There are 7 districts that Democrats could conceivably talk about winning. And in truth, there's maybe 3 here they actually can win if you net this out. And I still don't think they will win 3. So now that's today. Can things happen over the next 11 months that changes that equation? Absolutely. And our good buddy Patrick Finkston tends to be a bit more pessimistic. He says he's realistic. He predicts things will get worse for Republicans. And if that happens, we will be the first in this podcast to say, yeah, Republicans are going to lose some seats. But as things stand right now, if Election Day was right now, we're not losing 7 seats. We're probably not even losing 3 of these seats. Maybe 1 of these goes against us, maybe 2. So right now, we really aren't talking about a ton of drops on the Republican side. More of the races are on the pickup side, which is why let's go to that conversation. Let's flip over. We're going way too slow on this agenda, but it's great discussion, so I'm okay with it. We just talked about how Democrats have candidates in all these districts that Trump won, or that Biden won over Trump, and even some of the districts that Trump won, but won barely. Let's talk about some of those districts where Republicans actually have some opportunities, where Biden didn't win by much, or where Trump actually did okay. There are 18 districts that we talked about on our Live from the Lincoln Desk. Again, recommend you go watch that. There's a ton of information there. Here, once again, I've asked our team to just talk about 1 race each. So I'll ask you guys, and maybe we go in reverse order. So DeRay or Chris, what do you guys see as a race we should be talking about on the pickup side for Republicans?
Well, right next to 52 is 51. Again, a seat that should never have went Democrat in the first place. But just for many reasons, Republicans getting too relaxed is one of the reasons that it's gone blue. And this is in a traditionally red area. Now it's not as red, it's more purple. But Nabila Syed is a great campaigner, as much as I hate to admit that. She's good at knocking on doors. She has way too much energy. She has her own campaign infrastructure independent from the Democrat Party. Plus, she has the support of the Democrat Party just with funds and with volunteers and with everything that they do behind the scenes. So it is a tough race, but it's in a good district that we can win. And I hope that Tossie can pull it off. She seems to have a lot of people around her that are helping her. Just need to get those fundraising numbers up because Nabila has the numbers. So we got to at least match that, hopefully outraise her, which will be tough, but we'll see.
Yeah, listen, Tossie's we don't have a lot of tier 1 recruits. She is a true tier 1 recruit for Republicans this time around, and that is the second best pickup opportunity in the whole state for Republicans, not just in the House, but just period. That's our second best pickup opportunity. Trump's going to hurt us there. He lost by 13 last time around. Nabila Syed won by 7 over Boss. By the way, in our Live, I said Nabila was Palestinian American. She's actually Indian Muslim American, so I did get that wrong in our Live, so I'll correct that here. Ultimately, though, this is a district that Republicans can win. Locally, Republicans do win. It's actually +9 for Republicans locally. So this is definitely a district that if we can keep it from getting too nationalized, we got a great shot. But to your point, Saeed is a great fundraiser. She's got a ton of money. She's a good campaigner, but so far we've also seen Tossie working really, really hard and raising a good amount of money. So this is definitely going to be one of the hottest races in all of Illinois to watch is House District 51. So great call, Dore. Chris, what do you got?
I have House District 97. This is where Chris got optimistic on the live stream on Tuesday. I would talk about Senate District 19, but that makes me depressed and start drinking, so we're not going to talk about Senate District 19. So we'll talk about House District 97. This is Harry Benton. And look, I get it. You look at Harry Benton and you see the union guy. He's got the beard. He's got the signs that have the beard on them. And you think respect. How are you ever going to beat this guy? Look, we almost did beat him in 2022. And I think this is a district, it's the old Batnick district. This is a district that Republicans, again, should never have let slip through their fingers. I think it was under focused on in 2022 by interest groups and other Republican powers that be, that they kind of wrote this district off in the general election in 2022. If we actually focus on House District 97 with Gabby Shanahan in 2024, I think we can take out Harry Benton. I know nobody else will say that. You go anywhere else and they'll say, Chris, and they'll say, you're nuts. That's a safe Democrat seat. Well, I'm here to tell you, Gabby Shanahan can win, and it might just happen.
Nice. Well, any chance I get to hear Chris the Optimist, I'm really excited. I mean, I'm looking at their list. That's our sixth, by the numbers, our sixth best pickup opportunity in the House. Overall, maybe our seventh or eighth best pickup opportunity in the state. So you're not going crazy here. You're not, betting crazy against the margins. And you're right, Benton only won by 3 last time. He did run against somebody who did overperform the numbers. So that means Shanahan's going to need to overperform and then overperform even further. So there isn't a ton of room for growth. You usually like to see a candidate underperform before them because it's easier to really move numbers more than that, but it shows it's possible. And that district isn't awful for Republicans. It's a D1 to D5, depending on what you're looking at. It'll probably play like a D5 this time around. So our previous candidate overperformed by 2. Shanahan's going to need to increase that by another 4. That's not outside the realm of possibility. And as we talked about on the live, Shanahan has a lot of ties to deep-pocketed conservative individuals and organizations. If she does not raise money, it will be a disappointment. Now, we haven't seen a ton of that fundraising so far, so I really want to see that in the coming, next 1 or 2 campaign fundraising quarters. But if she can put some money together, because you can't expect, this being our the 8th-ish best pickup opportunity, or in the House, the 6th best, that they're not going to have money to give her a ton. She might get, 50 grand, 75 grand, just as some seed money from the House. She's going to have to make this race in play and then hope that when the House Republicans do their polling in August or September, the numbers look close enough for them to come in with, big 6-figure buys on TV, mail, digital, etc. So it's going to be on Shanahan. She's going to have to make this race in play over the course of the next couple of cycles. And if she does that, outside forces will come in and put her over the top. But it's really going to be on her between now and, let's say, the end of Q2 to make that happen. So we're going to be watching it closely. All right.
Well, there's a big difference between D1 and D5. I mean, that's like if your kid's playing basketball and you're like, how good are they? Somewhere between D1 and D5. It's like, well, yeah, that's the whole spectrum. That just doesn't say much.
No,
so.
what are you talking about?
Just let him have it. Just let him be happy for once.
Talking
It
about
never
4
happens.
points.
What are you talking about? D1, we're not talking about college basketball ratings. We're talking about PVI.
It
We're
works.
talking about
It works.
Partisan Index. But here you talking about
Works.
basketball.
One is
This
really-
is why nobody wins it. This is why
one's easy.
Republicans don't win in
It
Lake
was,
County because they got their
No, this
consultants
is-
thinking about basketball and not thinking about data. Well, here in Will County, the southwest suburbs, we're thinking data, and we think we can win in House District 97. Now, your House District 51, 52.
All I like is this. Two people who clearly couldn't throw a basketball through a hoop are fighting about basketball, which I kind of find pretty funny.
Hold on.
Oh my gosh. Always
Does he have
getting his
basketball or
participation
trophy
trophy.
or
You got
something?
a participation ribbon for basketball? Do you have
Oh, yeah,
best,
you get a trophy
best
showing
water boy
Southwest
2014
Suburbs B team, baby. Let's go.
B team? Best water boy from 2014, Chris Jacobiak.
Moving forward.
All right, Michael, Abby, what races do you guys got?
I was thinking congressional district 17 because Sorensen's got some issues, not the strongest candidate. Republicans have recruited Judge Joe McGraw, who is very well respected and pretty well known in that region. And there's been some interest from NRCC, Congressman Darren LaHood, and others. So it's going to be all hands on deck, and it's going to have to be, but I think that there's definitely a path there.
Okay. Yeah, listen, it's probably the 5th or 6th best pickup opportunity for Republicans in the state. Trump doesn't kill us there. He only lost by 8. That is not a suburban, like a Naperville district or a Schaumburg or Arlington Heights district where Trump kills us. Only losing by 8 means it's possible. It's still that, Dumb and Dumber. So you're saying there's a chance kind of concept, but it's probably going to play more like in the range of D1 to D4. and Sorensen's not a super strong incumbent. So there's a primary there. So you're gonna have to see if, you're assuming here that McGraw beats Kroll. And, listen, Kroll has a lot of union support. He's a strong union Republican, and that's a pretty union heavy district. So I don't know that we can assume McGraw will pull that off, but he is the choice of Republicans in DC and Republican leaders in the state. So we'll see kind of how this plays out. But Sorensen has 1.1 million on hand. Republicans will have to come in with some resources if they want to take 17. And all signs are pointing to RNC, NRCC have just sort of blacked Illinois out. They have no interest in this state. So will they come in to help in the 17th? Probably not. But hey, again, it's one of those situations where if we can show that it's close, maybe just like they did in the 6th, in the final 6 weeks, they come in with some resources.
I'm just going to say this is something that's been in my mind the past couple of weeks, is that I believe, and I wouldn't bet a lot of money on this, maybe like $100 or something like that, but I believe that Trump will slightly improve on his numbers in Illinois in 2024 because of how because of how terrible Biden is, how terrible things are going. People are they don't like him. They're not going to vote for him. I mean, maybe it's only like 2-3 points or something, but that does tighten the margins in some of these regions, and not all hope is lost.
Yeah, listen, so I'll just say to that, I don't know that Trump's going to improve on infinity. What's going to happen is propensity. You're going to see a lot of those people who were so excited to get rid of Trump last time are going to be just slightly less excited, not tons less excited, but slightly less excited because now they know how much of a disaster Biden is. So unless Democrats swap out their nominees, and it is indeed Trump Biden, I think you're going to see that there's going to be a little bit more of a propensity problem, a little bit more of a turnout problem for Democrats, which, by the way, they know. That's why they're talking about putting, let's say, an abortion referendum on the ballot, because they know they're going to have turnout issues in 2024. So, Michael, you're probably not wrong. As a result of those turnout issues, you could see these numbers slightly improve for Trump, and 1%, 2%, 3% could make a difference in some of these races.
100%. And that abortion
Oliver,
thing is kind of a double-edged sword for them, too. You got to be careful with that.
Yeah, as we talked about. All right, Oliver, what you got?
So we're going to talk about district we've never talked about here on Smoke-Filled Room. That's House District 45. It's one of the top pickup opportunities for Republicans here in Illinois. I just think this is a fascinating contest, and I really couldn't tell you how it's going to turn out. We have Jen Lattice Douglas. She was the Democrat incumbent. She decided not to run after just one term in office. We have Dennis Revelletti on the Republican side. We thought he might have a primary challenger, but that turned out not to materialize. He's been around Republican politics and is a former state rep. And then on the Democrat side, you have Marty Duder. She's an Elmhurst alderman, well thought of in the community. So this really is basically a Republican district that we've just lost. But again, I think that with it being an open seat, I think this is one of the best Republican pickup opportunities this cycle.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I've got it as the number one pickup opportunity for Republicans in the whole state. I mean, this is a district where, yes, Trump's a challenge. He lost by 17. So absolutely, there's a Trump factor here. But other Republicans, when you look at every other Republican that runs in that district, especially locally, you're seeing they're actually winning by about 5. This will play even. It's an R3 in a decent year for us. It's going to play even this year, maybe D1. Mazzocchi barely lost. She lost by less than 1% last time. Revelletti is going to be our candidate on the Republican side. He's had some wins, had some losses in the past, but this is a House district is small. This is a small geographical area, and Revelletti is pretty well known in that small geographical area. He starts off with a name recognition advantage over Duder, probably a significant name recognition advantage. So I think this is a great pickup opportunity for Republicans. We've got to have to execute. It's not just going to happen. We're going to have to make it happen. But this is one of those districts where it absolutely looks great for us on paper.
Yeah, and I think all three, where the district goes through 3 townships, and I would say these are some of the strongest township organizations in DuPage County. Obviously, we have great organizations across the county, but these are 3 organizations that really,
just to clarify.
Yeah, for Republicans. So if they're going to give this the full attention that it deserves. So I think with people, as long as there's a full court press by these organizations, I think we should be okay.
Yeah.
There are so many things you could do with the last name Duder that you could do in a campaign. It'd be a missed opportunity if you didn't take one of them. I wish I was running that campaign.
To be in charge of memes for House District 45.
This isn't.
It would be great.
This isn't like a 3rd grade class president race. You got to be a little more sophisticated here.
Hey,
People
Michael, have you spent
remember
any
the
time
funny
on Twitter?
jokes.
Come on now.
Oh, you
This-
don't.
elections are not sophisticated anymore.
Don't
I-
murder
I
I
Marty
would
Neuter.
argue
That's what I'm
that our
saying.
elections for higher office are less sophisticated than elections for
Correct.
class president.
Oh,
Exactly.
I mean, listen, Michael, come on. Your guy, Darren Bailey, your favorite
Oh, don't
candidate,
say that.
is going
Don't
after
say
his
that.
opponent for
Disavow.
daring to wear a scarf.
Disavow.
Like, you know, we're already in the call your opponent a sissy stage, and we're 4 months away from the election.
I don't-
Like, you want to say that these are refined elections?
Yeah, Trump
don't
won his
I don't
presidency on
understand
being a
why-
meme. That's who he was. He won
Yeah.
based on being a meme. That's his whole thing. And you say that that's not sophisticated? Like,
I don't understand why Darren Bailey is so proud of wearing Carhartt whenever Carhartt had vaccine mandates for their employees. He should be burning those.
Yeah, well, listen, God forbid Mike Bost wear a scarf. Like, that basically means I'm just never allowed to run for office. So, yeah, we're already in silly season, and December just frickin' started. All right, let's close with this, and let's be faster on this one. We don't have to spend a lot of time, but anything you guys noticed? We talked about a number of districts on the live at the end there for about 10 minutes. There were some missed opportunities for Republicans, or districts that we really just should be talking about that we really just want to be in play in, but they're just not yet. We got to build towards it. What do you guys got?
I was
I
going to
am
say House
optimistic.
112 because no candidate there for us, which stinks. But we got.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of our biggest missed opportunities. Katie Stewart is absolutely beatable. We would be talking about one of our top 5 pickup opportunities in the whole state had Republicans recruited somebody there. She only won by 8 last time. Trump only lost by 6. Stewart underperforms. East St. Louis, that whole region goes our way lately. I don't know. She's got a lot of money, but I really, really am unhappy about 112. It's a total wasted opportunity.
No one wants to talk. All right, I'll go first. So, a congressional district 14 is a district I just don't think we talk enough about ever. I mean, Lauren Underwood makes it very, very difficult for anyone to beat her, but we have to prepare for the reality that at some point she's not going to be there. And I think it's a much closer and winnable district for Republicans when she's not there. And I think if we're able to get a candidate with name recognition or build up that name recognition, we can prepare for that time. Okay, Lauren Underwood's not there. But I think we've just consistently seen that the candidate quality for the 14th congressional just hasn't been there to the level I think anyone would like to see. So I wish we would talk about it more, but it just sadly kind of gets put behind all these other congressional pickup opportunities.
well, going off that, a missed opportunity that's more of a rebuild opportunity is the 10th congressional. Not necessarily because we're missing it this cycle, but I think the past few cycles have really tainted people who wanted to run. But I'm optimistic because we have a good candidate running this cycle who seems to be kind of taking this district in a more serious direction now. And while it's unlikely that we'll win it this cycle, you know, we make a dent in it this cycle, run him or someone else again next cycle, and slowly build up to taking it back to what it used to be. So we will be talking about it.
It could be a sign. I mean, listen, you look at the 10th district. If and when Karras runs a strong campaign, especially compared to our last, handful of nominees in that district, you're going to see gains and movement, and then maybe we build on that, and we build on that. I mean, you could very well see illustrated here in the 10th district what we're talking about, that if you're going to make gains, if you're going to win, you've got to start to actually make incremental growth. You're not going to be able to just get down on the floor and do 50 push-ups if you can't do 5 push-ups. You do 5 today, 6 tomorrow, 7 the next day. You got to grow towards it, and Karras is going to give us a chance to start to grow in the 10th. That'll help us in Lake County. That'll help us statewide. So yeah, I'm really excited about Karras. The district itself is just too far out of play to be winnable in 24, but Karras at least gives us a chance to start to build, and I say kudos to Karras for that.
District I want to talk about is Senate District 43, which is mostly in Will County, part of the Snowflake County, DuPage County, of course. But this is Rachel Ventura. Now, Rachel Ventura, she's been involved in politics for a very short period of time, and yet she brings quite the reputation with her of being, how do I put this nicely, nuts. So with this in mind, it's important for Republicans to look at this district, and every time Rachel Ventura is on the ballot for it, make sure that we're running a full campaign. We didn't run a full campaign in 2022, and we got, for running basically no real campaign, I think we got within like 12, and this is like a D+20 district. keep chipping away at it. Again, as long as Rachel Ventura's there, it's in play in my book. She'll want to run for something in the future too, so keep following her and just keep trying to beat her, because if there's any Democrat who's beatable in the state, it's Rachel Ventura.
Yeah, you're totally right. House District 83, we're going to talk about as its own topic shortly. That's another missed opportunity, but click ahead if you want to talk more about that or hear more about that. I'll just close with House District 68. Dave Vela got no opponent. It should never be the case. This district's going to play like a D5, D6. Vela is not unbeatable. He won last time by 9. It's a working class district. There's some minorities in that district that have shown some willingness to vote Republican. Yeah, Vela's got like 400K on hand, so I understand why nobody wanted to challenge him. But that's 68's another one of those districts where we got to start to build and make gains. If we're ever going to take the state back, you can't just be giving up on districts like 68. All right, let's move on. One more topic on recruits for candidates. We would be talking about a much lower number of candidates who filed if it wasn't for the fact that for the second cycle in a row, IPI, the Illinois Policy Institute, has run a program specifically to get candidates to run in districts where entrenched incumbents are typically not challenged. By some counts, it's somewhere around 19. I don't know the official number. IPI, I'm sure, will let us know in the future. But they recruited a significant number of candidates. This is the second cycle in a row they've done this. There are two schools of thought. There's a school of thought that says more candidates is better because it will increase turnout and it will make people pay more attention. There's a school of thought that says it wastes resources and it will also make those Democrats work harder, which means it hurts us more. There's honestly, philosophically, there's a little bit of both of those arguments that's correct, because two things can be true at the same time. Shocker. But just wanted to open it up if there's anybody that wanted to talk about this very briefly, because we got a lot more to get to. But it's definitely something that's newsworthy and noteworthy.
I've made my opinion on this topic known before, so I'll reiterate it briefly. I think it's great that the Illinois Policy Institute philosophically wants to run candidates, and some candidates already run for these districts to begin with. So the Illinois Policy Institute gives them some resources to get yard signs and walk cards, and do everyday campaign things that these campaigns wouldn't otherwise.
I don't want to be the one who gets IPI in trouble. So IPI gets them on the ballot. It would be one of their PACs that might help them get yard signs and walk cards and all of that. So just for legality, I want to clarify, since IPI is a 501c3, they wouldn't specifically do that. Though, yes, it is an organization that IPI would be tied to that would do that.
Right. You know what I mean.
I don't want to get dragged into any sort of legal issue.
Collin the lawyer. Nice.
I'm not on the IPI legal team. Any case, it is my opinion that running candidates for everything is oftentimes a very stupid idea. For the reason of you give the other side an excuse to actually do something and run a real campaign and get their people out to vote, etc. In a presidential year where turnout's going to be artificially higher anyway, it doesn't have that much of it. It's not going to have that much of an impact. It really matters on a race by race basis where the overlap is and everything. So listen, they want to get people on a ballot so people can vote for them. God bless them. They didn't get anybody in my district, so I don't have a choice.
So let's think about.
Go ahead.
Let's think about option C here, which is maybe let's not even think about what impact it has on the election. Let's think about the broader impact, which is we're getting people engaged with the Republican Party that would never be engaged otherwise, by whether as candidates, volunteers, etc. So I think as a party that is really struggling to get people active and get people involved, I think this is a really great thing. We can debate whether it hurts or helps us in election, but in the long term, there's people that, would never be involved if it wasn't for IPI recruiting these candidates. So I think it's a net win for us.
That's a fair point.
Well, I was going to say something similar to that. We talk a lot about the strategy of it, and that's obviously the purpose of this podcast. But just recently, as especially me going to different political Christmas parties where it's more kumbaya, come together, the heart is warm because we're all fighting for our state. Wow, it's so great.
Because of the whiskey.
But the moral aspect of it, of it is encouraging, and people really do get encouraged of wow, you know what? Thank you for putting your name on the ballot. It's cool to see someone in such a blue district challenge an incumbent, even though they're going to lose. It's way to hold them accountable. And I think there's a lot of encouragement that can rev up our own people. And like you said, Abby, get people involved who might not have been involved. So win or lose aside, I think there are some net positives from it.
Some good points, guys. Appreciate that. All right, let's go into a handful of specific districts with things we got to talk about. So we've talked about House District 104. This is Mike Marin's current district, though he's stepping down. And there was going to be a Republican primary in that district. We've talked before about how this thing has just been a little bit weird. I've gotten a ton of phone calls about 104 because no one can figure out what the heck was going on here. The two candidates who were looking at it were Brandun Schweizer and Marguerite Bailey. Marguerite Bailey was or is Mike Marin's legislative aide. And on paper, it seemed like she was the one that many would have wanted for that district. She does kind of fit the profile of who Republicans tend to want to recruit. But what we had heard is that some of the local Republican leaders, especially Erica Ramsey from Vermilion County, who was their top choice, Republicans' top choice, but she turned it down. One of these days, she's awesome. She'll be a great candidate for something down the road. But anyways, they did not want Marguerite. They actually wanted Brandun Schweizer. And so Republicans were trying to find some balance here, try to avoid some sort of a primary. Plus, Marin was going to step down. So they needed to appoint somebody. And then you had the situation, well, if we have a primary, who do we appoint? Do we pick favorites? Do we appoint somebody who is just going to be a placeholder? It was getting really, really sticky. Well, we have a resolution. And so because we talked about it in previous SFRs, we got to kind of close the loop here on this one for our watchers. Marguerite has sacrificed for the party. I give her credit. She held a press conference saying, I'm not going to run for party unity. Let's just let Brandun be the candidate. So kudos to Marguerite Bailey for what she did there. So it is going to be a one-on-one race. We already know the two candidates. It's Brandun Schweizer, who Republicans are very excited about. Retired Marine, has a lot of contacts in the city of Danville. People say is an up-and-comer in the Republican Party. I know very little about him, but there is a lot of excitement that he has a bright future. On the Democrat side, they've got Jarrett Clem, who is a big union guy. And if you want to know what the Democrats' strategy to take this district will be, just look at the press release that Clem released this week about the race. There were at least 10 different references to unions or his union ties in that press release in like 4 or 5 paragraphs. They are really riding on the performance of the workers' rights amendment in that district and the union households in that district. And their goal is to ride that into a pickup for Democrats. We talked earlier about the best potential pickup opportunities for Democrats. And this district 104 is their second best potential opportunity in the whole state. So there's a reason why they're coming hard at this. There's a reason why Republicans cleared the field so that they can get ready for the general. This is going to be a battleground for sure. And Republicans are going to have to draw a line here because we can't lose any ground if we're, of course, going to have a net gain in 2024. What are you guys hearing about? What are you guys thinking about when it comes to 104?
It's just a good sign that we were kind of able to consolidate support behind one candidate. Hopefully they'll be able to appoint him and kind of will have a little bit of a leg up because obviously, I mean, the Democrats recruited the best possible candidate that they could have recruited. Time will tell if that is, good enough and the resources that they pour in will be able to move the needle. I personally don't think so. I think that Brandun will be successful here. I think it's a little bit of a pipe dream for the Dems, but time will tell.
Yeah, I mean, listen, let's talk about the performance of the district. Marin won it by 8. Trump only lost it by 4. It's an R4 district. It might play closer to an R1 in a presidential year, but it still is a Republican district. As you said, Clem's going to be a tough candidate to beat. Unions are already starting to come in with money. He's already gotten $25K from the unions. So it's going to be a big district that Democrats are going to come for. But Republicans will hold hard, and I'm with you. I mean, I think it leans Republican at the moment. But anything could happen. And if Democrats run a strong campaign and if Republicans don't, it absolutely could be a district that we're talking about slipping through our fingers come next November. All right, everybody got their thoughts in there for 104. I'll be curious to see how it plays out. But as we talked about, just close with kudos for Marguerite Bailey. She had a ton of supporters, a lot of people really pushing her hard to get into this race. I've seen how hard it is to turn down running for a district, especially a tier 1 district like this, for the good of the party. So she deserves a whole lot of praise and credit for what she did. All right, House District 82. This is yet another sign. We really, really are grateful for all the many, many texts, emails, calls, messages that we get We get dozens on a weekly basis, and sometimes it's information that we're not allowed to share. In 82, we've known that Egofske is going to retire for weeks, but we were told we couldn't talk about it, so we didn't. It's now public knowledge, so we can talk about it. The incumbent, I'll use air quotes because he's been there for about 5 minutes, but the incumbent Republican in 82, John Egofske, is going to step down. Nobody knows who's going to get appointed, but it will be Nicole. She's the only candidate who filed on the Republican side. She'll be appointed to that district, and as long as she spends the next year acting like an incumbent, it's going to no longer be a pickup opportunity for Democrats. It'll be pretty solidly for Republicans. What are you guys hearing? What do you guys think?
Well, I'm telling you right now, Collin, it's not a pickup opportunity for Republicans. But for Democrats, I mean, it's not a pickup opportunity for Democrats.
Well, especially, I'll just say this, especially with the quality of the recruit that they have. I mean, the Democrats candidate in this race is a bit crazy, way too progressive for that district. I mean, they don't have a tier 1 recruit on their side for this race. So we would have to really, really fumble the ball for 82 to not be a solid hold for us.
You mean DuPage County's voters would have to fumble the bag? That's the only part.
Jeez, Chris, did you not get to rant enough at our last smoke-filled room about DuPage County?
I barely talked at that one.
This week?
I barely talked at that one. Anywho, yes, I would expect Nicole to get this appointment for House District 82. I don't know who any other candidate who might want to jump in unless Gary Grasso wants to put his name in for the appointment and not get it. But I think John Egofske, I think he had this idea that Springfield was something that it wasn't. So when he finally got down there and realized, oh dear God, I'm in the super minority. This is nothing like being the mayor of Lamont. Please let me go home now. I'm assuming that's what happened. That's what happens to a lot of these mayors who are also state representatives or state senators. It takes a real strong person to do both jobs. Egofske will go back to being mayor of Lamont, where he'll keep doing great things, and Nicole will become an incumbent where she'll go on to do great things.
Yeah, you made a great point. It's what I was going to say, that people who are executives like mayors who go down to Springfield and realize just how different it is, mayors tend to not make the best legislators. They make good candidates, but they're not great legislators because you realize just how little of a voice you have. In the state house, you're one of 118. And if you're in the super minority, you don't even have 1/118th of the power. You have maybe 1/1000th of the power. So yeah, it's just rough. I get why not a lot of people want to put their names on the ballot for something like that. All right, let's talk about something that I know Chris is super excited to talk about. We're going to talk about a Democratic primary because we've been talking a lot the last couple of months about how the Israel-Hamas tensions are really going to cause a lot of problems for Democrats, and we are seeing it play out already in one of these districts. So in House District 20, the 32nd Ward, Democratic Committeemen, that's what we're going to talk about here. Let me lay the groundwork just really briefly, because this is in the weeds, and this isn't really even in the news, so a lot of people won't know about the situation. So there's an individual by the name of Ashan Daya. Actually, no, sorry. Let me make sure I get this all right. So Ashan Daya is the one who did this, right? Chris, I'm getting that right so far. He was caught in New York City ripping down a bunch of posters in a Jewish neighborhood of New York of Israelis who had been kidnapped by Hamas. He was with somebody who was repeatedly saying dog or calling them a dog in a different language. And he was immediately fired from his job by a company called Crafty. Anyway, so here's where this has a
that's ironic.
Here's a political ties
yeah.
to this. Two things. One, in House District 20, we haven't spent a lot of time on this, but there is a crazy tough Democratic primary in District 20 between the incumbent, actually, this is Senate District. This is Senate District, not House District, right, Chris?
House District 20 is Brad Stevens. Senate District 20 is what we're talking about.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So Senate District 20, I had House District down. Senate District 20, there's a primary between the incumbent, Natalie Toro, who's a little bit more moderate, and the challenger, Graciela Guzman, who is very, very progressive, who the progressives want to have in. So it's going to be a crazy tough Democratic primary. And there was a fundraiser that was being held in that race where Daya was actually on the host committee for Guzman. So Toro, of course, made it a big issue. This also becomes even more crazy because the incumbent alderman, Scott Waguespack, was going to step down as the 32nd Ward Democrat committeeman, but the candidate that he wanted to fill that never ended up filing. Well, guess what? This dude ended up filing. This Ashan Daya ended up filing, and so now he's the only candidate for Democrat committeeman in the 32nd Ward. So there are so many sticky ties here in that region. Chris, unpack all of this for us.
So it's a lot. It really is a lot. So Ishan Dai, he's connected to a lot of the more progressive elements of the northern side of Chicago. That Senate district is a very, very, very progressive district. Looking at the map, which I will pull up here in a second, it's I lost it again.
And that's
it's Logan Square, as Bucktown, Avondale, very, very progressive, gentrified.
And we've talked about this a little bit before. That's going to be $1 million primary. Like that is going to be a massive primary.
The Senate Democrats are going all in on Toro. They're finding every avenue necessary, and Toro is aligned with. Collin calls them moderate. I mean, comparatively so, they are moderate, but it's
comparatively,
more old,
right?
Yeah, comparatively so. But it is more old school political forces within the north side of Chicago. This is Iris Martinez, the circuit clerk. Toro has been tied to Iris Martinez, the circuit clerk. It's those people.
Yeah,
versus,
I should just say establishment. I just hate the word establishment, but it's more establishment than it is moderate.
That's what it is.
Moderate's definitely not the right term there.
Yeah, so the more. The old guard type people. Well, it's gonna be a very messy primary. Now, Wagaspak, he's been kind of on the outs with the regular Democrats. At one point, Wagaspak was one of the most progressive members of city council.
Yep.
Isn't
that crazy to say?
He's just been there for too long, and maybe as he's gotten older, he's gotten more conservative, or the council's just gotten that much more crazy is another question. But he didn't want to be
that one.
Yeah, well, it's kind of both. But either way, Wagaspak didn't want to be committeeman anymore. And now this guy is going to have a free ride because Wagaspak's guy didn't get on the ballot. My big thing I want to talk about here is this is a testament to how weak some of these organizations are now. Because back in the day, stuff like this never happened. If you wanted somebody to get on the ballot for a certain position, you got on the ballot. There is no, well, I'm not going to run. There's this other guy who might run. Oh, no, he didn't make the ballot. Like, come on, guys. Like, this is why I keep saying that, I hate how Republicans in the state keep talking about the Chicago Democratic machine. This is the Chicago Democratic machine they're talking about. They're talking about ward committeemen who can't properly name a successor and then not get that successor on the ballot. And now there's a jihadist sympathizer, for lack of a better term, running unopposed for a Democratic primary. Wagaspak is now going to run as a write-in. I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up winning this. I would also not be surprised if he ended up losing this because it would be kind of funny if he did lose it. But everything coming together here, guys, if you want somebody to run for something, get your petitions on the ballot and make sure you know who's on your host committee for a fundraiser. Because you get bad looks like this.
Well, and this is what I want to give Shia Kapos a bit of credit here. She's been talking a little bit about the larger picture here, and she's right. I mean, you're going to see these tensions continue to rise as you see. There was a story about how there's protests in Chicago and other cities because of. I mean, you've got the DNC coming here, so you've got a lot of protests and vigils popping up in Chicago and around the suburbs. Some have targeted Biden. Some have even targeted Schweitzer of all people. Like, there's a lot of grassroots movement here on the sort of the Palestine and even Hamas side of things, but more Palestine than Hamas. And then you saw in the 6th Democratic primary, you saw Kasten's opponent go after him for not signing onto the ceasefire resolution. You saw Rashid in the 11th go after Foster for not signing onto that ceasefire resolution. Again, we've been talking about how this war is going to really cause a lot of headaches for Democrats because their progressive younger base is going to be pro-Palestine, whereas their older, more establishment or more traditional Democrat base is going to be more pro-Israel, and this creates a massive conflict for them. And we're seeing it come out. Senate District 20 is just the first of many, many examples, I think, that we're going to see between now and March, and maybe even bleeding into November.
So how do Republicans take advantage of that, Collin?
Well, that's going to be the question. I mean, we've had, if you go back to our previous SFRs, we've had 3 or 4 discussions on this topic about how Republicans take advantage. So I'd encourage people to poke around at some of our previous episodes. Since we're already over an hour on this episode, I don't think I can get on that rabbit trail yet again.
I'm just going to make one point here, Chris, before we wrap up this topic. Weren't you saying, I don't know why people are making this a campaign issue because it's not really going to last in the news anyway? And now you're saying this is...
That's not what I said.
Check the tape. I think Oliver's pretty close to it.
My point was, I don't know why Republicans are making this such a big campaign issue, because they're trying to play for a demographic of voter who has historically never voted for them.
Yeah, historically
saying,
never.
Chris,
but if we don't
have
start changing the numbers, we're never going to win an election.
So that's just my one point, Chris. Since you want to dunk on my county, I'm going to dunk on you a little bit. So
I like it. I'm not even going to let him respond. We're just going to let that one ride. All right,
Too much
let's go
basketball,
to
this dunking.
Let's go to House District 83. We talked about how this was a district that was a missed opportunity for Republicans for two reasons. This is a missed opportunity for Republicans. So 83, that is the district that Keith Wheeler used to hold. He got basically gerrymandered out, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
He lost to Matt Hanson in this last election because of that. And so there's two reasons why this district should be in play for Republicans. First of all, Hanson was caught in a pretty ridiculous DUI not that long ago. That's going to be a campaign issue. And so that would have been something Republicans could have used in that race to try to make up some ground in 83. The second reason is Hanson has a rematch against his previous primary opponent, a guy by the name of Boxenbaum. If I'm saying that correct, it's kind of fun to say. He's a 22-year-old, Arad Boxenbaum, who's running against him. Now, Hanson beat him last time 2-1, but this time with the DUI, with the fact that Boxenbaum's going to run to his left, he's going to be much, much more progressive. There's even Democrat operatives who are saying that Hanson's not well liked. He might be in trouble here. So you're going to see, at minimum, a very weakened Hanson come through that primary into the general. But at best for us, what could happen is you get knocked out by a 22-year-old far left progressive with no experience in politics in a district that is more like a D3 to D6. This is not an unwinnable district for us. And if Republicans have a really far left progressive to go against, that puts us in the catbird seat to try to pick that seat back up. And yet we don't have a candidate. We didn't get anybody to file in that district. Now, we can still slate somebody, so it's not saying it's going to be too late, but the history of slated candidates versus candidates who run on the ballot, you lose several points by being slated versus having actually run in the district. So if we slate somebody, it still is a missed opportunity because we're going to lose some points at the ballot box that we would have gotten if we had just recruited in this district. This I rate as our worst missed opportunity. Now, Republicans did a great job recruiting this cycle. There's always going to be some misses, so I'm not trying to rag on them, but this is a huge missed opportunity for us.
You know, Collin, the last time I heard someone say that I really hope the Republican goes against the 22-year-old far left progressive so we could easily take him out in the general. Well, that's how we got Nabila Syed. So,
yeah. Well, and then it's incumbent on us to actually run a good candidate and run a good campaign, which, as much as I like Chris Boss, that just didn't happen in that election. So we still got to execute on the ground, which is why my buddy Finkston's all over me, because he says that's what's going to happen. Republicans are going to screw up, and that's why Democrats will win. I'm not ready to just throw my own party under the bus. Let's give them 11 months to see how we do. But yeah, if we screw it up, then yeah, all we do is end up with a worse candidate in this district. But Hanson is vulnerable for multiple reasons. 83 is definitely a missed opportunity for us.
Now, Collin, I know you're always an optimist, but I think you've been getting way more optimistic lately. I don't know what it is. I don't remember you ever being this optimistic about the Republican chances before. Am I missing something?
I don't feel like I'm being that optimistic, to be honest.
You're pretty
I'm trying to show both sides a little bit. I'm fair and balanced about it. But listen, I've been doing politics in Illinois now for almost 2 decades. And in almost every single one of those cycles, my party has failed and we have lost more seats than we should have. I'm realistic in the fact that there's a decent chance that happens again next November. But I'm also doing everything I can to fight to not let that happen because I'm sick and tired of losing. We get to play in politics outside of Illinois now. We do races inside and outside the state. And we get to do lots of winning outside of Illinois. And yet here in this state, we seem to love losing as a party. So it's really frustrating to me that in our home state, we can't get our acts together. And I'm just really convinced that maybe this time around, we don't completely shit the bed. But, we'll see.
I think it's been a massive struggle. I mean, House Republicans, especially in these House races, finding candidates for these suburban districts has been a massive struggle. I think you see there's 2 districts in DuPage County. They're a little bit out of reach, but again, we're not finding candidates to run. And I think it goes back to what we talked at the beginning. There's just not an enthusiasm for people to run for office here in the suburbs.
Yeah, well, it's a problem. We got to change it. We got to turn it around. All right, Michael, I know you had this on the agenda last week, but since we didn't have you with us, we saved it for you to talk about this week. What you reported to us that not only is Darren Bailey actively recruiting and the Freedom Caucus actively recruiting candidates against an incumbent Republican legislators, but apparently they're also recruiting, or they recruited, challengers to Republican precinct committeemen. What the heck is going on here?
Yeah, so Southern Illinois' leading fashion critic, Darren Bailey, was active.
That's better than a DeRay one-liner. We got to give that some room to breathe, man. That's beautiful.
All right.
Fucking hell.
That sounds good, Michael. Sounds good.
He kind of Illinois Family Action, they had kind of put out something about, hey, run for precinct committeemen. Darren was kind of circulating that link, and then on his Facebook Lives encouraging people to run for PC. And some primaries of people that are aligned with him kind of popped up where they're primarying incumbent Republican precinct committeemen. And we were getting some texts and phone calls and stuff from county Republican chairmen that were aggravated that Darren was doing this because, some of their best PCs are getting challenges just because that PC isn't supporting Darren for Congress. So it's causing some friction between Darren and party leaders, which is something that he is an expert at.
Well, and this is the thing. You're running for office in what's going to be an incredibly difficult primary against Bost there in that congressional district. You need every vote you can get. Why? They were running candidates also against other legislators in that area, which will piss off those legislators and make them work hard, not only in their own races, but to help Bost win his race. And now to run people for committeemen to anger people even further, you don't gain by each of these. Even if you win, you come out behind. It's probably why the Freedom Caucus tends to lose a lot, even legislatively, where they can't get anything done. It's just dumb tactics, dumb politics, and it drives me crazy because I believe I get ostracized by people up here in the northern suburbs because I dare say that there's a place in our party for conservatives like Darren Bailey. I believe that the Freedom Caucus has an important place in our party, and I get in trouble for ever daring to utter those words out loud. And then these people show just how politically dumb they are sometimes, and I get annoyed because I actually defend them, and then they make me look stupid because clearly they have the brains of as a fashion consultant, as you said. So this is just dumb political tactics that will only hurt him in his 12th congressional primary, let alone in anything else that they're trying to get done. Why they're doing this, I get it. It's a purity test. It's blah, 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 but it's politically stupid.
I think the thought behind it would be, and this isn't me agreeing with it or disagreeing, but if I'm trying to think like what is his 10,000-foot strategy, would be a lot of the precinct committeemen and people who are already active in Republican politics are probably going to be voting for someone like Mike Bost. So if he can get in a precinct committeeman, it's going to be telling the people in their precinct on who to vote for, including Mike Bost. So if he can get his own precinct committeeman to be out there campaigning for themselves and then also saying, oh, I'm the true conservative, vote for me, the precinct committeeman, and also vote for Darren Bailey, I think he thinks that can drive out some turnout and kind of be surrogates for his campaign in a weird way.
The problem is
there's a long history. There's a long history in politics of people outsmarting themselves. It's one of the reasons why Dan Proft, for instance, as a consultant tends to struggle because he's actually, that's too smart. He oftentimes will outsmart himself and do things like this. Sometimes you gotta just look at Hanlon's Occam's razor as the simplest explanation being the truest one. And in this case, Matt, I get what you're saying, but now you took people who are already going to volunteer for you and asked them to focus on their own race and then a little bit your race. So you're actually losing some of their volunteer time rather than gaining, and you're ticking off the other side in the process. So is it something where a couple political people sit around a table and go, ooh, look at how smart we are? Yeah. And is there some semblance of strategic thought here? Of course, but it is too cute by half, and it's going to end up costing them more than it helps them. And it's why in politics, one of the hardest things is to edit yourself, whether it comes to marketing, whether it comes to strategy. One of the things that is really hard to understand when you want to become a strategist is understanding that some of your most creative ideas are never going to see the light of day because tactically and strategically they won't end up gaining you more than they lose you. And this is one of those situations where it's cute, it's creative, but it's the wrong tactical decision.
Well, also, I would just to close this up, kind of, it's like, okay, so you're going to have a precinct has, between 800 and 1,000 voters in it. Let's say, 40-50% of those voters are going to, and some of these counties will vote in a Republican primary. You're going to pit two neighbors against each other and say, hey, and go out there and say, hey, by the way, the guy that lives 3 houses down is a rhino. You better not vote for him. It's just, what a joke. What a joke.
And it turns people off from the party. I'm a big believer that the more localized the race, more personal it gets. And we had some of these up in DuPage County last cycle where people were primary precinct committeemen, and like the stuff that people were doing was just the most offensive and awful stuff. Some of the most awful things I've seen in politics. And it's just, I'm not saying that primaries are bad in general, but in these situations, it just doesn't serve a purpose other than to piss people off. Voters, party people. It just seems like you're saying, you're outsmarting yourself on this one.
Well, I think that's why he's doing it.
I just can't wait for Michael to get more texts and calls about how awful I am and how horrible I am, which is kind of ironic from the Bailey people, considering, again, in Northern Illinois, I am one of the few people who occasionally defends them, and yet they like going after me. So whatever. I'm sure you'll get calls this week, Michael.
Oh, probably.
Yeah, well, it is what it is. Keep ostracizing your allies. It's a great way to win politics. All right, let's let DeRay have some fun because we got to talk about the 10th district in Lake County. We've talked a few times on this podcast, as little as possible, to be honest, but a few times about Joe Severino. And if you don't know the story, he spent a long time telling people how he was the only true Republican on the planet, and people like DeRay and me and others were all evil. We were all rhinos. He was the only person who knew what a real Republican was. And then he left the party and decided he was going to run as a Democrat. And then he kept trying to get on the ballot as a Democrat, but nobody would pass his petitions. So he never made it on the ballot. So now he's running as an independent. So the dude couldn't figure out how to be a Republican. He was also rejected by Democrats. So now he's just running as an independent, saying that both Republicans and Democrats are horrible. The solution, the truth, may just be that nobody wants Joe Severino. But at the end of the day, he is going to continue his crusade against both parties now as an independent. Matt, have some fun with this one, buddy.
Well, you say have some fun, but I'm always having fun, Collin. But yeah, what you said was pretty spot on. I mean, if you can't get the 500 signatures that you need to get on the ballot as a Republican or a Democrat, how are you going to get 12,000 signatures that you need to be to be an independent on the ballot? Hey, if you can get that, we always say get at least twice. If you can get 24,000 signatures, he deserves that congressional seat. He can have it. I won't say anything, but it'll be tough.
What I love is the constant spin from Severino, where he was talking about how, oh yeah, this was always our plan, blah, blah, blah. We didn't try to get on the ballot, but I've had several people report to me that there were people out there passing petitions for Severino. So it's not like he didn't try to get the signatures. He tried and failed to get to run for Congress. It is a ridiculously low number of signatures that you need compared to other races in Illinois. He did not need that many signatures to get on the ballot and couldn't pull it off. So I think you've got a pretty valid point. The signature requirements to run as an independent are ridiculous. So more than likely, he's not even going to file that. This is just an excuse to try to stay in the news, to try to stay relevant, to get people to talk about him, which is why this will be the last time we talk about him until he fails to make it on the ballot as an independent. And that will be the last time ever we talk about him. But this is just a ploy for him to be interesting and be out there.
I actually heard from, you gotta give him like a little bit of credit. Like, okay, he's running as a Republican, a Democrat, and independent. Like, this deserves to probably be like in the Guinness World Record book, or maybe put him in a Hall of Fame somewhere or something. Because I don't think anybody has switched this many times, like in a 90-day window.
Oh, you want to watch?
So.
There's a Hall of Shame somewhere, I'm sure.
He needs a certificate for his fridge, I think. Maybe that's
he should have some sort of participation certificate. Yay, you tried. That could be
Chris, get something out of your trophy cabinet there for him.
I got you. We'll take one of my old bowling trophies.
Just put a little label up, like a sticker, and put it over what it used to say.
Give him a Dundee or something.
You tried running for office.
Whitest sneakers award, the Dundee for yay you tried goes to Joe Severino. Matt, you were trying to say something before?
Well, I actually heard that one of the reasons he's running as an independent is I heard from a few Democrats, no, not you, Chris, that he went to some Democrat meetings and they actually threw him out because they said, you're not a Democrat, you don't align with our values. So the Republicans don't like you, the Democrats don't like you. Maybe this is something that can unite the country. Like, if the Republicans and Democrats have common ground, I've never seen that before.
That could be what's on the trophy. Joe Severino, the great uniter.
Wow.
I like it.
I like this.
Ronald
idea,
Reagan, number 2. That's what
Keep
he is.
Giuliani be
Yep.
giving him a call
Reagan
for,
was a
for
great
political
divider, but
advice.
that's besides the point.
Yeah, exactly, Oliver. We do. You know what? We have our clown of the week. We have our wall of shame. Not all that gets shared publicly, but maybe we'll have some fun and share some of those in the future. All right. Couple more topics. We're way over time, so we're going to close out on these last couple topics here. But Michael, something you noticed in the filings, we've been talking about how Republicans have been making gains in the Metro East every cycle for the last few cycles. At this point, it can only be described as Republican dominance in that region. You looked at the candidate filings and you had some stuff you wanted to share there.
I just wanted to point out a couple of counties. So in Monroe County, which they've usually had, one or two Democrat countywide candidates the last few cycles. This time they had 4 Democrats file for precinct committeemen, and that was it. No candidates for any other office. Madison County, no Democrats filed for any of the countywide offices. The only candidates they have is a Democrat county board incumbent and 2 state rep candidates. So that's a big deal. And in Jersey County, there was 1 Democrat that ran for county board. Everything else is either Republican or independent. So we're kind of seeing the Democrats kind of fold in on themselves and not even really put up a fight in some of these counties.
Yeah, listen, the narrative is that Illinois is lost, but when you look at the numbers and you dive into it, there are places that we're not doing horribly. South suburbs into Will County, we're seeing some wins, we're seeing some gains. You're seeing it in the Metro East. You're seeing some smaller wins in places like Joliet, like Springfield, some of these regional areas. It's not all horrible for Republicans. And even in the era of Trump, there are places that we can actually still do decently well. And once we get through this tough time, once Trump is no longer the standard bearer for our party, you're going to see things flip pretty fast. This is a state we're going to make a comeback in once we lose that artificial drag at the top of the ticket. And you see it in places like the Metro East, where we're not dead. The Republican Party in the state is not dead.
And a lot of those changes have happened in the last 10 years. I mean, you look back, even a couple of cycles ago, like Democrats were dominant in Madison County in some of these areas. And we were getting, beat up at the door by voters, basically. And now they're all our best friends. So it's just like, even like, you guys in DuPage or Lake or some of these other places where there's problems, like hope is not lost. You can turn it around. It happens.
At least our problems aren't like not being able to read at a 3rd grade level or like some other Southern problems.
Whoa!
Ooh.
I mean, at least they're voting Republican.
Hey, as much as he rags on the North, we can rag on the South a little bit. Like, I'll take my homes over the trailers.
This is one of those situations where like Chris gives little jabs to Oliver, Oliver gives jabs back, and then Matt's like that. I don't know if you guys watch The Office, like Andy Bernard, who's like, I am cutting Phyllis's head off with a chainsaw. Just comes in way too hot. Man.
Calling Michael illiterate is crazy.
That is
I'm not calling Michael illiterate. I'm saying that's the archetype of the voters down there.
Whoa!
Wow. You're making it worse,
What's
dude.
going on?
You're making it
All
worse.
right.
All
right.
Put down the shovel, man. Put down the shovel.
We're gonna get letters on that one for sure.
In the comments, they'll agree with me. Comment down below if you agree. Hit that like button and subscribe.
We got no time, but we got 2 quick things we're going to hit. So 2 things. Let's get these knocked out. I just wanted to point out here that Kwame Raoul, we wanted him to go after corruption so much, and it seems impossible to get the guy to go after corruption. But here we are. He's finally actually going after somebody who's a kind of a politician. Of course, it's only because it's a Republican. He would never dare go after a Democrat. But there's a candidate by the name of Juan Reyes who filed to run for office in Senate District 34. He lost to Stottleman last time around. He filed to run again. Well, Kwame is going after him because the Illinois State Police are accusing him of falsifying certificates, claiming applicants had completed their required training for concealed carry licenses when they had not. There's some stuff here that's fairly serious, so it's definitely a real situation. I don't mean to make light of it. 2 things. There's a reason why Republicans have been pushing a different candidate in that district, Crystal Soltow. They're very happy about her. They think she's got a bright future, so you're going to hear the Republicans probably push her even harder now in that race. But I don't know. My big thing is it's just, hey, Kwame, I'd love it. There's these massively corrupt politicians in the state. I certainly would love it if maybe you'd start going after them. let's pretend like this is your first foray into this. You're dipping your toe into it. And, maybe actually it's time now where you can start to go after some of those really corrupt politicians, many of which you are Democrats. But, Kwame, it's kind of your job. Is that just a Collin rant, or does anybody have anything to say about that?
Are there any Democrats specifically you would like Kwame Raoul to look into?
I don't know. Maybe just
Mayor
check
Dalton.
the news, because everybody who's been gone after in the state who's corrupt, it's been the FBI who's done it, because Kwame hasn't lifted a finger. But suddenly he's able to lift the finger when a Republican happens to have some forgery issues, because that's what this is. It's a forgery charge, which, again, I don't mean to make light of, but we have Democrats and we have Pritzker administration employees who are stealing, and elected officials who are stealing millions of dollars, and we've got PPP fraud, we've got unemployment fraud at $5+ billion. Kwame doesn't have any time to go after that, but he's got time to go after the forger who happens to be a Republican.
I just thought the argument was better if you were specific about who you would like to go. Yes.
The mayor of Dalton. That
Yeah.
would be
Let's
one.
start.
Well, I think the
no,
feds might be on that one already.
Yeah, I don't know if we want to lose the enjoyment that is Dalton. It's on our agenda, but we'll never get to it today. All right, Chris, you got to be fast, but I'll let you talk about House District 36 just ever so briefly, because there's a Democratic progressive versus moderate battle brewing there that has been on our agenda to talk about for like 2 months. So hit it, but hit it quick.
So Kelly Burke is the incumbent in House District 36. She's another mayor and state representative. She's mayor of Evergreen Park. Very moderate state representative, very, very well liked in the community over there. She is not running for re-election. She's had cancer and she's, I believe, doing very well now, but she's not going to run for re-election. She's backing Rick Ryan. Rick Ryan was a Senate candidate from 24 years ago. They never, he's back. So they're backing Rick Ryan, and then the Arab American Democratic Club is a big organization in the southwest suburbs. And the leaders of that daughter is running. Her name is Sonia Khalil. She's running in that district because there's a large Arab American population there. Worth, Chicago Ridge, Oak Lawn, very growing Arab population. So they're going to give a go at that district. There's a lot of Arabs making a go at a lot of districts in the southwest suburbs this year. I think Rick Ryan will be fine. But it's an interesting district and something to pay attention.
Well, and ultimately, I know I said be quick, but I just want to add this point that it's a progressive versus, more establishment, if you will, sort of fight here, because the party choice, or at least Burke's choice in Rick Ryan, is a little bit more towards the center, whereas Khalil is definitely not. She's also close to Clem Bellinoff, who had another progressive pickup last time around, which was, I'm going to get it wrong, but Rashid, I don't want to mess up his first name, so I'll just say Rashid. This is kind of, a lot of people are talking about how this might be this year's race like this, where you had a little bit more towards the center in Zalewski, and he got knocked out by a more progressive. Now they're thinking it might be the case here where the same thing might happen, and it does seem like some of the same players are starting to line up. So it's not only progressive versus moderate, it's also, again, that sort of Palestinian Arab sort of faction of the Democratic Party getting stronger and stronger and stronger. This is going to portend to more problems down the line as Democrats get dragged further and further left.
Well, Rashid already has a primary in House District 21, which we haven't gotten to. So we'll see how many of these resources can get spread out this cycle for the Arabs.
Yeah. All right. We're way over our time, but we had a ton to talk about. We had some pretty juicy topics we didn't get into, like there has been a ridiculous amount of drama between Brandun Johnson and J.B. Pritzker this week. The migrant tent failures are just, it is asinine. So we're absolutely going to talk about that next week.
South-side shelters.
Soft, yes, thank you. Give me that heart attack. Appreciate it. Pritzker's administration also drafted a letter that they wanted to send down to Texas to try to discourage migrants from even coming here. That's going to bite Pritzker in the rear end if he ever runs nationally. We'll talk about that. We also got to talk about the fact that it seems like Chicago is just absolutely doing their best to push United to leave this state, United Airlines. So we're going to talk about that and all the failures at O'Hare Airport. So we have at least 3 super juicy topics that we have to push till next week for a lack of time. Otherwise, our producer, Lane Davis, will kill us because we're already at an hour and a half. So let's close it down there. Thank you to Abby, Chris, Matt, Michael. Really appreciate you guys. It's been a long week because you had a 2-hour live and now an hour and a half smoke-filled room. So you guys have earned getting yourself a drink to end the week. Thank you extra to our producer, Lane Davis, who's had to work triple time this week getting everything ready for our multiple recordings and our live session. Really appreciate you guys, our watchers and our listeners. Stick with us. Episode 31 next week is going to be a doozy leading into the holidays, so you don't want to miss it. We'll catch you next week.